Welcome to the Kava Flow. Today we're going to be talking with one of the Kava community's greatest vendors, Mike Munsell over at Kalm with Kava. He is someone who's been around for quite a while, has put out some pretty innovative products, and has had many chances to go out to the islands and meet the people that actually grow our kava and how they and has learned a lot about how they grow it and how they prepare it and how they serve it and the general kind of feeling around kava culture. And so today's episode is going to be primarily around kava culture and what it's all like on the islands for those of us in the Western world that have no idea about it. So, Mike, without further ado, thank you for hopping on here and talking with me.
Bula.
Bula. So, Mike, can you give us a little bit of a background about yourself and kind of where you came from and how you got involved in the Kava community?
Yeah, it was. I've been drinking kava for about 16 years now, and I got introduced to it when I was in college. One of my friends there had spent a semester in New Zealand and came back with this root in his luggage returning home, and said, "You gotta try this weird thing that everybody in New Zealand's drinking." And so he'd hack off a piece and pound it up and make us up some drinks, and I fell in love with it instantly. And so I pretty much drank kava on and off for the next 9 years or whatever. But the biggest problem I found was I could never get consistent results. It was either really good or not much of anything, or oftentimes there were some bad experiences of feeling pretty crappy the next day. And so somebody from Kava forums reached out to me. I had started a kind of instant drink that I wanted to do to help introduce people to Kava, and I was learning as much as I can. And I found a source that I was comfortable with, but still didn't know a whole lot about it. And somebody from Kava forums reached out to me, and I started interacting with the community, and I got in touch with Gary Stoner from True Kava, and we started talking about why there was such variance in quality. And he had some lab equipment and connections with Dr. LeBeau, the main researcher into kava and whatnot. And I just started sending him samples of everything that I could get my hands on, and we went from there.
Awesome.
And that's really when I learned that the people, the small farms. I took my first trip to Fiji in 2011 because I really wanted to get on the ground and see what it was like, what might be affecting kava coming into the U.S., how I could make it better, streamline things, and make sure that it was good quality. And so I just kept sending them samples from everyone I met with, wholesalers, small farmers, everything like that. And when the results came in, what we realized was a lot of these small farmers had really good kava that didn't have a lot of the other issues that the big wholesalers were experiencing, that we saw, that had aerial parts or 2-day in it, or even mold, or all kinds of different things.
For those for those folks that are listening in that aren't familiar with all those different parts of the kava plant, can you help us, or can you explain what what the various parts of the kava plant are, and
Sure.
what we drink?
It's a plant, and actually there's a picture of the leaf here on my wall. I have a picture close by of the actual plant itself. Actually, I do here on my.
Oh yeah, you've got some?
I've got a picture here on my computer I can share with you.
Cool.
So this is a field of kava right here, a kava farm in Hawaii. And all of these are individual plants. There's probably, I don't know, at least 100 plants here, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
and here's kind of them separated out a little bit different in various years of growth. And so basically, your kava plant here, here's all um, the aerial portions of the kava plant. And only what we drink is the underground portions. And so there's a big root ball that's the stump that's called, or Luena in Fiji. And then there's the roots, which are the waka. And those are the higher kava lactone pieces of kava. And so here's women in Fiji separating the roots from the stump. And so these big portions here are stump portions, all sitting over here. And here's all the roots that have been chopped away. And then the stump will get chopped up finer. And then the roots will all get laid out to dry. And then typically in Fiji, they will pound this all together, and you can just buy kava, or you can buy, waka by itself or Luena by itself. Even though a lot of times when you buy what it says is waka, that's supposed to be a whole root, there'll still be some stump mixed in, because typically when you pull a plant, you'll get about 2/3 of the weight will be stump portion, and 1/3 will be the root portion.
Got it. So, of the roots that we were just looking at, right? You had the little thin roots that were waka, and then you had the stump that's the Luena, right? That's the only stuff that we drink. So, the other parts of the plant that you were talking about, right? The stem and the leaves and all that kind of stuff. That's bad stuff. We don't want that, which is why,
Right.
Mike, you
Not
test
only
your
is
kava
it
to make
like
sure that that's not there.
low kava lactone material that will weaken the beverage itself. Your stump will usually run between 4 to 8% in kava lactone content, and your roots will run anywhere from maybe 5 for a young plant up to 14. I mean, I've heard of it going up to 22 or even 25% for a super old plant. But normally it'll run between like 7 to 14% range. And then the aerial parts only have like 1 or 2% kava lactone content. So it's pretty easy to tell just by testing if there's been aerial parts mixed in. But the nice thing about True Kava is they do also a chlorophyll test that can tell if any stem or leaves are mixed in with the kava as well. And they actually do contain compounds in them that will make you sick.
So, if you buy your kava from someplace that maybe buys wholesale kava, where you don't necessarily know the farmer, or if that particular vendor doesn't test, there's a chance that you're going to be drinking stuff that won't make you feel too good.
There's a chance, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, and you test all of your stuff just to make sure no one's going to have a bad
day. Every shipment.
How does that work?
And then I have a couple shells out of every shipment too, just to do a double check.
Well, you definitely want to make sure that your product is good, right? I thought that was the first rule. You're not supposed to sample your own stuff.
Yeah.
That might be a different business. Never mind.
Well, I think if more people did, we'd have a lot more better quality kava on the market.
There's something to be said about that for sure. So, so when you are sending away your samples for testing, right? You send them off to True Kava. Do you work with any other labs?
We do. We have 2 other third-party labs that do all of the microbiological testing for us. Salmonella, E. coli, all the regular stuff. We get some HPLC results from them as well, and then we get positive identification, all stuff that's required by the FDA for a dietary supplement.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's kind of go back to your trip. And you said that in 2011 you went to Fiji, right? And that's kind of what started your world, travels in Melanesia and Polynesia. since then, you've gone a few different times. I know that I think last year you went as well
Oh yeah, now we
after the
go
cyclone. Yeah.
now we go at least once a year, if not twice a year, to just go. I mean, it's always good to get on the ground, meet with new farmers, catch up with our old ones, make sure that they're doing well. If there's anything we can assist them with, both Kava related and non-Kava related.
So how do you actually find these farmers? I think a lot of folks have a lot of issues finding good kava because they can't get their boots on the ground, and so they have to
Right,
go
and
to a
it
guy who's
is.
online or
It's
something, right?
it's tough if you don't get down there and just start beating the streets because a lot of these people don't have a lot of internet access. They're not posting kava for sale online for a big kava farm in Fiji or Vanuatu or stuff like that. If you do find somebody online, usually it's a wholesaler. And so I just kind of made it my kind of personal mission to go down there and just go straight to the source and get what we can. And so my very first contact was just a friend of a friend who knew somebody in Vanuatu that this person in Vanuatu's their father was the chief of a village on one of the islands, and I started contacting with them, and they said, "Yes, we'll take you to the village, and you can meet them, and you can ask them yourselves if they'll sell you kava." And so I did. I
Wow.
hopped on a plane and I went down there, and they allowed me to come into the village. And actually, I've got some pretty cool pictures of that.
Great.
So this kind of give people a better idea of what life is actually like there. So here's the airport on Pentecost Island, and these are the kids that came out to meet us as the plane landed. And we actually brought them a couple of bags of cookies from the local store in Port Vila because the person that was bringing us there said that they would absolutely love that, and they did. They were quite pleased to have a couple bags of cookies. But then we took a truck from there over to the village. We actually had to take a boat from the truck drive as well. But this was coming into the village. This is the Nakamal. So this is pretty much standard for all Vanuatu villages. Is they've got this big kind of like a Nakamal is considered on in the villages. It's kind of like a meeting hall or community center and whatnot. And so anything that important is happening will go on there.
So
And
instead
so
of our idea of a Nakamal only being like a kava bar, it's really much more than that.
right,
And
it's a community center.
okay, and kava is at times or maybe always, I don't know. It's a central
It's a
focus
central
inside
place to
that
drink
building.
the kava as well, yes. And
Got it.
so
Cool.
they invited me into the Nakamal, and then we started with the Kava Ceremony. And so they prepared the kava in the traditional manner that they do on Pentecost Island, which is here they've got a piece of limestone, and then they grind the stump and the roots in their hand into a pulp, and then they add water to that pulp, and they'll strain it through some palm leaves or hibiscus leaves or something like that to strain out the bigger pieces. And then they'll invite you up, and you take your shell down and enjoy it.
So that's fresh kava, or is that dried?
That's no, that's straight fresh green kava. They had just pulled the plant that day when they heard that I was coming.
Well, that sounds like a terrible experience. I'm
Oh,
not envious of you at all.
it was amazing, and luckily whenever I go there, they prepare kava for me when I arrive, and there's nothing that beats kava that's been harvested just a couple hours ago.
So,
One shell equates to about 4 or 5 of our normal shells.
wow. Wow. So with this experience, right, where you go and you meet with these folks and they have a Kava ceremony. I mean, is that something that they do for everybody? Is this an honor? Is it, just a sign of respect?
I think it's pretty typical if there's a guest coming to the village that they will have a ceremony for him. I mean, I honestly don't know extensively if if whoever, if Matthias, if they had ceremonies for him when he came to visit the villages or whatnot. I just know of my experiences, really.
Mm-hmm. How about the ceremony itself? I assume that there are certain times when there's actual formal ceremony, and then there are many times where it's informal completely, right?
Oh yeah, and they said we didn't stay overnight there, but they said almost every night they're drinking kava.
Yeah. So with you then, is it a formal experience when you go to places like this?
Right.
And
Yes.
so what is a formal kava ceremony? What actually happens other than them grinding the root and you taking a swig?
Well, I've got some more pictures here of another one that we just did the last time when I just went a couple of weeks ago. So here, basically, it is formal. There's guys that are in charge of grinding the roots. Here's the limestone piece, and then there we've got three guys here grinding up the root and the stumps into this fine material here. And then once that's done, they'll add it all, the pulp, into a bowl or a basin and add the water, and then find some sort of straining material and strain that out into your cups, and then pour a shell. And then, so basically, the way that it's done in Vanuatu is one person, usually it's either the guest or the chief, the most respected person at the Kava ceremony takes the first shell. And then you take your shell. Usually in Vanuatu, you lift up your shell to the sunset or the horizon and thank God for kava, and then you down your shell, hand back your shell, and then you go sit down and contemplate the kava, and the next person is invited to have their shell.
So it looks like they actually strain it. They prepare it and strain it almost one shell at a time, at least from the looks of this.
That's exactly how
right?
it's done. Yes, that's exactly how it's done for a ceremony.
So when I prepare kava, generally I'll prepare 3 or 4 shells at a time. But these guys, they're like, one's enough for right now. Hey?
Yeah, no, it really is. You need to take them singularly, and give it a good 15 minutes to see how it's going to affect you, because it's so strong.
So with these ceremonies, then I'm assuming when you go to these villages, well, actually, I guess I should back up a little bit. You know someone in the village who has the kava that you're potentially going to buy. Does that sound correct?
Right.
And is it just one guy in the village generally, that kind of does it? Is it his family? What's the...
Well, usually it's pretty much, the structure in Vanuatu is very interesting, and so they don't have a lot of authorities or governing systems. It's basically just the chief is the head say for that village, and whatever he decides is the law. And so you have to meet with the chief to be able to go into an enterprise like this by any means. And then he will make sure that the proceeds get distributed to what the village needs for itself. And so like we'll go back to the pictures of the village then.
So just to clarify, you're saying that when you go into these villages, you're generally negotiating with the chief, and the
Correct.
village is the whole village is putting together their efforts to plant and maintain and harvest that kava, and then pack it up and sell it to you. So
Right.
it's the chief that you're dealing with all the time, right? And
Right.
it's this whole town that's benefiting from whenever you buy from them directly.
Correct.
Okay, very cool, very cool.
And so one of the villages that we visit, this is just kind of a brief rundown of kind of what the conditions are like there. This is their church. You saw the Nakamal. You'll notice that they have rainwater collection here and this irrigation running across the bottom of the screen. And so this is solely due to their proceeds from purchase or selling kava to me. This is one of the most, if not the most advanced village on the island. They have irrigation, running water to a lot of the houses, which is very uncommon, and electricity just by selling their kava.
Wow.
And it's because we pay them a really good price to ensure that we get very good quality kava. That there's, it's all noble. That it's of one variety. It's fine if they want to sell other varieties, but they have to, package it and label it separately so we know, and just make sure that it's the absolute best quality kava and fresh. So we usually get in shipments at least once a month from them now. And
That's
so
great.
here's a house, a typical house, and this kind of illustrates why cyclones are so devastating to these small islands. Is because can see this is all made out of palm leaf and tree limbs and stuff like that. And when you've got hurricane winds of even 70 miles an hour, but I think Cyclone Winston and Cyclone Pam, those were Category 5 hurricanes that reached like 170-mile-an-hour winds, 180-mile-an-hour winds, and it just wipes the entire island clean. It's very sad to see, but you
Wow.
can see that this is just, here's another one. This is another typical Fiji and Vanuatu setup. That's just scrap iron or metal,
Aluminum.
yeah, metal sheeting that will be attached to some 2x4s and 2x6s and stuff, and that's literally somebody's house.
So when you've gone into these places, I mean, with this particular village, how long have you been buying from them?
This particular village was our very first supplier. It was the Borongoro that everybody knows and loves.
Really?
Still my probably favorite kava, although Damu is coming up close.
Damu's great.
But Borongoro is just always the one that speaks to me and a lot of people as well. And so that's been for 6 years now that we've been purchasing kava from them. And here is a picture of the actual Borongoro plants.
Oh, great. So, kind of harkening back to our previous topic, right? Those stems that you were just showing, can you bring those back up one more time?
Oh,
Sorry.
absolutely.
I think it's important for people to understand that the stems that you see there are kind of knotted, right? But with each one of those knots represents another plant that could be harvested or that could be planted, right?
Right.
So
when they dig this plant up, the roots will be coming out through here, the lateral roots, crawling through the ground just like a normal tree or something. But they'll just hack off anything that's above the ground here. And like you said, each of these little nodes, they're called inner nodes, can sprout a new kava plant. And so, really, if they wanted to plant every single one of these, you could get, 100, 200 kava plants from one kava plant that was harvested.
Wow. So at some point, I'm sure it just gets to a point where it's like, well, I don't have enough room or space to even
Right.
plant these, right? Because they're not necessarily small plants and they can get huge.
Absolutely, yeah. But there's a lot of demand for kava right now. Vanuatu and Fiji are experiencing their highest domestic demand ever. There's hundreds of kava bars in Vanuatu, and I mean, like commercial kava bars, like in Port Vila, that people go to, um, and everybody's just loving kava.
So when people talk about a kava shortage, I think that there's been a variety of reasons that have been brought up. And I think that most of them have, we should give credence to most of them, right? But I do think that there have been some things that have been brought up that are not so true or potentially a half truth in terms of why there's a shortage of kava. In your mind, why do you think there's a shortage?
Well, just like I said, their domestic um, demand has grown quite fast in the last couple of years, and export demand has grown really fast too. There's more kava bars opening across the U.S. every day, and people are seeing that this is a really good alternative to alcohol or maybe medications that they might take or something like that, or just to just chill out and have fun with friends without having to drink something alcoholic or whatnot. But I give some of the popularity to having good kava coming into the U.S. I think that's one of the reasons why it is getting popular is because people aren't getting a lot of negative effects that they might have been 7 years ago. Um, so it basically is just demand. But the nice thing is the uh, islands are seeing that and they're planting like crazy. I just got back from our most extensive trip a couple of weeks ago where we were gone for 23 days. I had 16 flights and visited
Jeez.
on visited 6 islands and the three major kava producing countries, Fiji, Vanuatu, and Tonga, and met with farmers at all three of them. And everywhere you drove in Tonga, you just look to the side of the road, and everybody's planting kava. And it was actually funny because I went and met with the Ministry of Trade over there, and they were saying, luckily breadfruit season was coming in because a lot of people had foregone planting like yams or cassava or normal, consumable food for the hopes that they would have, money from a kava growing. Um,
So now there's a food shortage.
yeah,
Goodness
it's not a
gracious.
food
But a yam and cassava shortage.
shortage. A lot of people are planting kava.
All right. So, well, that's super interesting. That is super interesting. How about kind of going back to, well, I guess less on the kind of far away village front and more on, in general on the islands. Um, what kind of kavas are drank in nakamals? Is it a variety? Is it just whatever they have on hand? Are they
Well,
picky?
it's pretty interesting, really. So, um, in my experience, and I've been to quite a few Nakamalls across Port Vila, um, 2 day is non-existent. I haven't run into 2 day experience. I think ever when I've been drinking kava in Nakamalls. Um, they pretty much save that for export to the U.S., and that's only because of a few wholesalers who, have promoted that. In their culture, they do drink 2 day, but not for like routinely daily drinking kava. They'll use it for medicinal purposes. You know, um, and I'm not saying that it's you know toxic or anything. That
Hmm.
there are uses for it. If you need to crash out really hard one, it's like NyQuil or something. If there's a medicinal use for it, it'll knock you out, but it's not something that you're going to want to drink every night by any means.
Yeah.
And so it's mostly, but the kava bar is usually, I've got some pictures of nakamals here, and so would be a nakamal in the sense of the commercial use of it. This is not; it's still a meeting place, but this would be the commercial kind of thing. So all the nakamals usually have a light out front to let you know if they're open or not, red light or green light. And then, so here's a green light. This is Seaside, and this is one of my favorite nakamals because they serve Borongoru from Pentecost. And here's more kind of expats nakamal called Amakal that they serve kava from Ombai. And okay, so here's kava being offloaded off of the ship. So the ship will go out to these islands like Pentecost, Ombai, Maiwo, Epi, and pick up produce or whatever to bring back to the main town of Port Vila. So here you can see we've got some oranges or onions or something up there, but the majority of it is kava. And so most of these white bags here are all kava to go out to the nakamals.
Wow.
Like I said, there's hundreds of nakamals just in Port Vila alone. And you walk down the street and you see uh, these little lights and little shacks set up everywhere. I mean, like down the road from here, I bet that might be one right there. But I mean, within a stone's throw, there's going to be another one.
That's amazing.
And so everybody is the ships come in usually about 3 times a week from going around to all the islands and collecting all the food and kava, and they'll bring it into port, and then they come and offload it. And so here are some guys that I was talking to at the port that own a kava bar in town, and here's all their kava for the next 2 or 3 days, loaded up in the back of their truck. They're gonna take
2 or 3 days. Oh my
back,
gosh.
take back and wash and cut up and get ready for tonight's kava.
Wow. Mike, with all of these farmers and villagers that you've been working with, what sort of improvements have you seen in those villages because of those kava proceeds? I know that you've talked a
Right.
lot.
And really, that's one of the main reasons why I do this. I mean, I did it first out of self necessity. I wanted to have good kava to drink every night,
Very selfish, Mike.
and
Very
then I just
selfish.
wanted to share it with I wanted to share it with everybody else. But once I started meeting with them, it was so touching to see the impact that we were making with these people. And like I said, since it's not a commercial crop, um, that is owned by some corporation that's getting the proceeds of all this, all the proceeds are going to families or villages or whatnot for the kava that we pay for. And so it's really cool to see. So actually I've got a couple of things here, I think. um Here's our ladies cutting kava. But so, I mean, these ladies are earning a wage to, prep the kava for drying and whatnot. Here's the kava drying, getting ready for export. We buy in both whole root chips that we grind ourselves and whole roots, or for some people, we'll have them pound it for us as well. But yeah, this is what it's all about. This is a hospital that we have been donating to ever since we started buying kava from Vanuatu and made our first visit there. And they told us about this, project that they were just getting started on, and that they needed, a little bit of help to make it expedited. And so we've been, assisting them ever since. And it took 5 years to build, but it just got completed this year. And it was the first medical operating facility on the island in this island of Vanuatu. And before then, the people had to take boats to get any medical treatment done. And so that helps so many people, and that was something we were so proud to be a part of.
Awesome.
Here's, some more of the building on the outside. Here's where we came down. I came down approximately 3 weeks after Cyclone Pam to Vanuatu, and I brought with them over 100 water filters. I brought with me over 100 water filters in my suitcases that I brought down there and distributed them out to the villages. And just, stuff like that. We just bought a bunch of water filters for Fiji after Cyclone Winston for the people on Tabauni who didn't have access to clean water. Here's one of the villages all wishing us goodbye in our boat. But yeah, that's the big thing that I want, people to realize, that by purchasing kava, you're not just, making some company over there rich, that it's going into these people's pockets and they're using it to send children to school. A lot of, you know, secondary or, college or even high school aren't really up to what our normal Western standard would be. And so a lot of them want to pay to have their kids go to New Zealand or something like that and get a good formal education. And even over there, there is prices for schooling, and so they have to pay yearly tuition for their kids, no matter what age they are. And they sell their kava plants to pay for that. They sell kava plants to pay for medical operations for family members, stuff like that. That's what's really I'm proud to be a part of and get to see firsthand.
That's awesome. That's super cool, and it's really cool to understand really where that's going. And it's not like it's just, I guess, lining someone's pockets. It's actually making hospitals, right? Like that's actually making hospitals. That's really cool, really cool, and great to hear, great to see. Whenever you buy all of this kava from these folks and they sell it off to you, you go ahead and sell it to your customers, and then you go back to them, right? Maybe a phone call, maybe an email, maybe you actually do a visit. Is there any sort of connection that they feel with the Western world? We kind of feel like we're almost
Right, and that's
like kind of delving into their world a little bit, like kind of dipping our toes, right? Have you, but we still don't have a real active connection, right? Do they feel anything towards us?
Yeah, and that's another really cool thing about being part of this is they ask as soon as I hit the ground, or as every time after they've sent a shipment to me, then they'll email me, did you get the kava? Is it okay? What are people saying about it? Stuff like that. And I'll be like, yeah, people love your kava, and they're so proud to hear that. And I think that really helps with, maintaining the quality, is that they love to hear that people, a whole world away from them, are drinking something that was, in their backyard, that they put their blood, sweat, and tears into, and have taken care of, for maybe 5 or 10 years. So it's almost, like a kid to them too. It's a lot of work to grow a kava plant. And then, so they always want to know, what do people think of our kava? And they're so proud to hear that, people really love your kava.
Wow. That's really cool.
So here's another classic example of a knockamal. Here's the window right here. You go up to the window and put your 100 Vatu down, or 150 Vatu, depending on how big of a shell you want, for your cup or your shell, and they hand it to you, and you go off to the side here and raise your kava up and thank God for kava and swill it down. And most people are then spitting immediately after to get the taste out of their mouth, which is quite a sight to see.
Mm-hmm.
And then you bring your shell back. And what's really cool though is it's like a community sense, that there's all these benches to sit around, and usually they've got fires going and tree stumps to sit on and stuff, and you just sit down and you can have a light conversation with somebody if you want, or they totally respect if you want to just sit there and listen to the kava. It's just such a cool environment to be in. Everybody's friendly and quiet and just having a good time. I've never seen a fight at a knock-em-all by any means. It's just really cool.
That's awesome. So do you have experiences there where, I mean, it's, you just said everyone respects you if you just want to sit back and relax and listen to the kava, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
are there ever bands playing at these sorts of things?
I've never seen a band or anything. And actually, the last time when I was just there a couple of weeks ago, there were a couple of kids playing around, and one of them started chasing the other and was screaming, and like two guys just turned over and looked at him, and they go, psh, psh, and these kids just shut their mouths because they knew that they were at a knock-em-all and they had to be quiet, and just kind of respect everybody drinking their kava.
Wow. So, yeah, I mean, if only we could teach our families to do that here. Don't tell my wife I said that. So that's really cool. Earlier you were saying that at a knock-em-all you've never seen 2-day, and I think this is a 2-part question. And before I even ask the question, I'm almost tired of the noble 2-day conversation, right? Like,
Absolutely.
at this point, I'm just so tired of it, and I don't really care about it. In the fact that,
And I've never said ban it. I will definitely respect that. That's Vanuatu's decision, and it's a smart decision because it was out of control with their exports. But if there's vendors that want to sell it, sell ISA or 2-day or whatever. But make people aware of what it is, because it's not a pleasant experience for some people.
sure, at least let people understand what they're getting into, right?
Hmm.
So, with that being said, right, and I hate to beat a dead horse, but recently there's been some discussion about folks saying that all that is consumed in Nakamal's in Vanuatu is 2-day kava. Is that true?
That is not true to anything that I've ever seen. And I've been to Vanuatu at least 3 or 4 times now, Fiji at least 7 or 8 times, Hawaii a couple of times. Even in Hawaii, they've got ISA pretty prevalent there. And a lot of the places will have both. And if somebody really wants ISA, they can have it. But most of the places will have surprisingly Fijian kava, and maybe a little bit of fresh makea or papakea or something like that. But as far as Vanuatu is concerned, there's a reason why 30 or years ago or whatever, when LeBeau did all of his research, or 40 years ago, and went out to these villages, you know, they said that these are medicinal kavas, or these are no drink kavas, or these are ceremonial kavas, that they're classed like that because they don't drink them all the time.
Keyword
And
all the
people
time.
definitely don't want to drink them all the time.
Mm-hmm. So is it ever like a discussion at the kava bars or
No,
in the
I go, and I think pretty much everybody goes to a Nakamal with the assumption that you're going to be drinking noble kava, because I mean it's during the work week. You don't have to worry about if you're going to feel tired and groggy and upset stomach the next day. Um, it's noble kava.
hmm Do people ever discuss whether something is noble or two-day when you are negotiating with them or when you are
Yeah, then they know. I mean, it's in the Kava Act of 2002 that they are not allowed to export two-day kava. And so, I've had discussions, back years ago when I started this, I had to say, no two-day. And they were like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And, there's still plenty of them that'll try to get by with mixing some in with the noble, but the Ministry of Trade has been doing a really good job at getting the education out there and doing testing on the shipments before they leave port and stuff like that. It's not saying that some don't get through, but the you in the law of 2002, you have to specifically ask for 2 day to even be able to have them ship it to you.
mm, wow.
And I mean, and they know that there's, I don't know, there's not there's not a good reason to be drinking it all the time.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's super enlightening. I think a lot of us here in the U.S. who have never been to the islands have very little understanding of what kava is like over there, and it sounds to me like not only is it a central point of discussion and peace and unity over there, but it's also something that can help people relax at the end of the day without having a lot of ill effects, right? And they recognize that they are always going to be drinking noble. It's never even a question of whether they're going to be drinking two-day, which is really interesting to hear. Now, let's stop talking about that stuff. Well,
Agreed.
all right, cool. So what are your next steps? Are you? I mean, what's new for Kalm with Kava?
What's new? Well, we're always working on getting you more kavas. We've got a couple showing up that are interesting prospects. We're trying to bring back the Puniono. Unfortunately, the first shipment we got was not up to our standards, so we're not going to be selling that. But we're still in talks with a couple other farmers from Tonga to bring that in, or possibly other Tongan varieties. We have a Samoan variety on the horizon, possibly.
What?
We're always thinking about innovating with new products. We're working on a couple of different things. We've got some new swag coming out. This is the new Kalm with Kava Tanoa word art tee, and we'll be rolling that out in women's tank, and we've got a little Kava beach scene.
Cool.
Have Kava at the Nakamal, or just maybe chilling on the beach, having your shell.
That's awesome.
I don't know, always trying new things and just listening to customers and seeing what
Awesome.
going from there.
Well, I appreciate the time. I have one final question for you. Of your products, which is your favorite?
Like I said, it was the first, and it's my go-to is the Borongoro.
All right.
It's consistent. It's well, all of our products are consistent, but it's just the one that speaks well to me. That it's funny that it was our first product, and it's still my very favorite kava. I'll drink Borongoro every night if I have a chance.
It's your baby.
Yeah, it is. But the Damu is right up there, man. That's another great kava. That's our newest kava that we found, and people have been giving us some really great feedback on that, and it's a good one. It's a really good, and it's the essential, I guess the essence of kava, I would say, is it's a good social kava, and it brings people together. It's one that's not going to knock you out, and for the night, and not going to make you, solitary or anything. You want to talk to people. You want to have a good time. It doesn't make you antsy like some of those higher Yangonan kavas do. It's just a good, chill, happy kava.
It's great. Great. Sounds good. Well, I appreciate the time, and I hope to hear more from you. Let us know if there's anything cool coming out. I am really excited about it. I'm not the guy to review products. I just want to talk to people in the industry. But let us know. We're all excited about it. We want to drink some more kava, especially anything that might be funky coming out that is a little different than the usual. And we'll talk again, I'm sure.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Thanks, Morgan.
Appreciate it.
Bula.
Bula.